Hello, fifth graders. Today we're going to continue in Unit 1 and we are going to move on to Lesson 2. Our objective for today we will review using estimation to add and subtract whole numbers. By the end of the lesson, you're going to solve an addition and subtraction problem using estimation and answer the questions, how can you decide whether you should round to tens or hundreds? We're going to be using our math journal today, so make sure you have that out and ready. Our important vocabulary for today is sum, difference, and estimation. Okay, today in our journal, I want you to write the titles Estimating Sums and Differences and write the date. I want you to start thinking about 3 situations in when rounding would be beneficial. If possible, discuss with a parent or partner. Okay, go ahead and pause the video to think and discuss and stop and jot.
Well, rounding's useful in a lot of real-life situations. Like now. I only have $50 with me, but this kite costs $15.33, the candy bar costs 99 cents, the marbles cost $3.75, and the video game costs $29.99. I could add up all those numbers, but I don't have a calculator, and it's kind of inconvenient to pull out a pencil and paper and write it all down in the middle of a store. So I'll round the numbers. It's a lot easier to add 15, 1, 4, and 30. That makes $50. Although, that's a little too close for comfort. Let's see what the exact price is.
Okay, so in the video, he talked about shopping might be one example that would be beneficial for rounding, especially when you don't have a calculator. Measurement might be another example. For example, you might say someone is about 6 feet tall. And then time might be another example. You might have heard someone say, oh, I'll be there in about 30 minutes. So those are all good examples. Go ahead and pause the video to add any of those ideas to your list. Okay, let's get started with a word problem today. The problem says, imagine we want to buy these musical instruments and books. About how much would we spend? In the video, the example discussed shopping in decimals, but for today, we're going to stick to whole numbers. Okay, so I want you to watch me as I solve this problem. The problem says, about how much would we spend? So about means that we're going to be rounding today, and since it says how much we are spending, we're going to find the total of all 3 of these items. So you can see I have set up my problem here and I've lined up the place values correctly and wrote neatly. But since we're not finding an exact answer, since we're rounding, I'm going to go ahead and put an X underneath to indicate that I don't want an exact answer. Now I just need to decide, since I'm working with 3-digit numbers and 2-digit numbers, whether I want to round to tens or hundreds. Since some of the numbers are smaller, and if I tried to round to hundreds, it might round to 0, I'm going to go ahead and get a more exact answer by rounding to the tens. Looking at the number line below, I'm going to find which 2 tens 124 is in between. So looking down here, I can see that the nearest 10 to 124 is 120 or 130. I'm going to use the halfway mark to help me decide. The halfway mark between each one of the tens is 5. So I would say 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and all the way up. So 124 would fall about right here, and it would be nearest to 120. And I wrote that here. Okay, now I'm going to do 77. 77 would fall between the 2 tens of 70 and 80, be greater than the halfway mark of 75, so it's nearest to 80. 48 is in between the 2 tens of 40 and 50. It's nearest about right here, greater than 45, about right here. It's nearest to 50. Okay, so even when we're adding our rounded answers, our rounded total, we still need to make sure that we're lining up our place values correctly. Let me go ahead and add now. 0 ones plus 0 ones plus 0 ones is 0 ones. 2 plus 8 plus 5 is 15 tens, so I'm going to regroup. 1 plus 1 is 2, so that's 2 hundredths. So my total sum is we would spend about $250. Okay. Go ahead and pause the video to copy that example in your journal now for future reference. Okay, now let's solve the problem together. It says, imagine we have raised money for a class field trip to either Austin, Texas or Washington, D.C. It says, how could you estimate the difference between the total cost of each trip? Okay, so the total cost for Austin, Texas for the flight, the hotel, and the food is right here in this column. And the total cost for Washington, D.C. is these numbers right here. Okay, so the problem also says that we're going to be estimating. So that tells me that I am not going to be having an exact answer today, that I am going to be using rounded numbers. It also says that we are going to be finding the difference. So we're going to be subtracting today the total cost of each trip. Okay, so for the total cost of Austin, Texas, I need to add to find the sum. For the total cost of Washington, D.C., we need to add to find the sum. Again, we're estimating, so we're not finding the exact answer. And then we're finding the difference by subtracting. Now we just need to decide, since we're working with 3-digit numbers, whether we're going to be rounding to the nearest tens or to the nearest hundreds. Since we do have a lot of 3-digit numbers that we're going to be working with, it'd probably be best to round to the hundreds so that we can keep track of those numbers easier. So what I would like for you to do now is to pause the video and try to solve this problem on your own using the number line below. Okay, let's go ahead and check your work. So here is how you should have set up Austin's total cost of the trip and how you should have set up Washington's total cost of the trip. Hopefully you did not find the exact answer since the problem asked us to estimate. Now let's go ahead and check your rounding. Okay, let's see. You should have said that 369 rounds to 400. 251 is nearest to 300, 174 is nearest to 200, 426 is nearest to 400, 364 is nearest to 400, and 257 is nearest to 300. Next, you would find the total cost of the estimated total cost of each trip. You should have said that the total cost for Austin was $900. And the total cost for Washington was $1,100. The last step you should have solved was to find the difference between the two trips by subtracting 1,100 minus 900. And you should have got $200. Okay, so our estimated difference between the two total cost of each trip is $200. If you got that correct, good job. If not, I would like you to go ahead and copy these notes down into your journal for future reference. For today, you are going to be doing some independent practice in an Oracle workbook page. You are going to have to decide whether you round to the tens or the hundreds. Just remember to pick whichever's easiest for you to solve mentally. There's an addition page that I'd like you to do, and there's also a subtraction page. And you can probably find those pages in your Google Classroom. For extra practice, I would also like for you to do 5 minutes per game of each one of these online activities. Just copy the URL into your web browser and practice 5 minutes addition and 5 minutes subtraction. You can go ahead and pause the video now and play the game. Okay. Wrapping up, today we learned if we're trying to decide between rounding to the tens place or to the hundreds place, you might want to round to tens when working with a mixture of 2-digit and 3-digit numbers, or when you want a more exact answer. For hundreds, you would round to hundreds when you're working with several 3-digit numbers. And that's the same for 4-digit numbers as well. If you're rounding several 4-digit numbers, then you probably want to round to the thousands place. Okay, last but not least, for your exit ticket today, I want you to solve this star formatted word problem and answer the question, how did you decide whether you should round to tens or hundreds? You can find that and turn that into your Google Classroom. Thank you so much for your participation today, and I look forward to working with you soon.